Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Monday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky on a night where Hollywood was celebrating Oscars. We'll tell you why the Lakers earned themselves a Razzie. That's next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, maybe it wasn't worth a Razzie. It wasn't the worst movie of the year, but it wasn't good enough. Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, no matter how or where you get your podcasts. Always free, never behind a paywall, and also available sometimes on weekends. And Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go to participate in a community that is really now rocketing towards 14,000 subscribers. Love the support that everybody's giving us there, giving the show there. Great place to talk to each other, talk to us, leave us questions, leave us comments. We'd love to use them on the show. Make another Locked On podcast your second listen of every day, if you can, after making us, of course, your first. I want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That is prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On. Okay, this sort of thing was bound to happen at some point. The Lakers have been playing very well. They certainly came into Sunday's game understanding the stakes. They didn't look like they were checked out. They didn't play well, though, Andy. And the Knicks took advantage. Lakers could not quite get it going, and they lose 112-108. It just seemed like every time, especially as the game went along, they build a little momentum, something would happen to them, whether it's a big shot from the Knicks, the Lakers making their own mistakes, and they just couldn't get enough momentum and sustain it. Plenty to talk about with this one. What stuck out to you? Where you want to start?
Well, I remember I noted after the win Friday that we saw how the Lakers are in this place because they turned the ball over 20 times, but still managed to get a double-digit win. That unlike pre-deadline where the Lakers had to play damn near mistake-free basketball in order to win, like they've actually reached a place as a team where that little margin for error, which is just a hellish place to be competing from, they're no longer operating from that position, but they're not so good as we saw tonight, where carelessness can't come back to bite them in the ass, or a lack of execution can't come back to bite them in the ass. And that's ultimately what happened in this game. And certain things that the Lakers have not done well all season were problematic. For example, they are a team that is just, as much as they've improved their defense, especially over the last few weeks, they remain terrible in transition defensively. And this night was no exception. They gave up transition points. They often gave up transition and 1 points. Those transition and 1 points often came off their own lack of execution, whether a turnover or just not getting back quick enough after a miss, even after a make. Julius Randle also too. And maybe this was something they planned for. Maybe they planned for it and it just didn't matter because Julius is a really good player. But I had a feeling coming into this game, Brian, that Randle was going to be looking to really punish the Lakers because he played really badly Saturday against the Clippers. He got benched for like the last 6 or 7 minutes of the game, had a technical, had I think a flagrant, and played by his own admission, even while thinking the refs were crappy at their job. He said, I was crappy at mine. I had a feeling Randle was going to come into this game looking to redeem himself, and boy, did he ever.
I mean, first of all, he has for a little while now made a habit of playing well against the Lakers. And, Julius, good night, bad night, whatever it is, plays extraordinarily hard. So, you're going to get that. He plays, grown up, big man basketball, very physical. And I know, Darvin Ham was asked about the physicality of this game, the physicality, certainly of Friday night's game too. And the Lakers, I do think, we're kind of beat up a little bit. I mean, I will say this felt to me like the a game where they could have used one more big. You got Hartenstein out there, you've got Julius Randle out there, and Mitchell Robinson is, a decent, like, I felt like as Wenyen Gabriel was not terribly effective in this one, and Anthony Davis, AD was harder on himself, I think, than I would have been on him, but it was still not a great game. And from a rhythm standpoint, he never really got fully going in that sort of dominant way that we've,
particularly the second half. I thought AD
the second half, he was fine in the first half.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Like the second half, he did some really good things. He had 16 rebounds on the night, but 11 were in the second half, 4 on the offensive glass. Like he was working, but he was 2 of 7 from the field. He said afterwards that he did not think he had 12 points, I believe, at the half and finished the game with 17. He missed 4 or 5 free throws. And he said afterwards that like he really put the loss on himself. And he said that he thought, D'Angelo Russell, who was fantastic in this game, D'Lo clearly showed up. He did his job. Schroeder did his job. Reeves did his job. Rui did his job. These are the guys just that he called out by name as having done their job. And he said he thought he was fine defensively, and I don't disagree. But he said offensively, I needed to do more in this game.
Yeah, I would agree.
Particularly the second half. He looked out of sorts. You made a good observation when you and I were talking before the game. There's probably an element of him getting used to playing with D'Lo, and in particular, getting used to all of a sudden not having to do everything. What does that mean?
Well, it's also too, it's like there's that, it's like he and LeBron, for example, D'Angelo had 23 at the half, I believe.
Yeah.
It was either 23 or 25. I think it was 23.
He had 23.
Yeah. And so he was, as they say, cooking. And so, but it's different. Like, look, Anthony Davis played with LeBron James. It's like he is used to having another player out there who handles the ball, but often goes on his own sort of heaters but it's a different kind of deal with D'Angelo. It's coming from a different place. It's a different player. The rhythm is different, whatever. And I do think there's an element of adjustment here where Davis is both trying to assert himself and stay active and be dominant, while also making sure that he's not taking flow away from a guy like Russell when he's playing really well. And like I said, I think Davis was better than he was giving himself credit for. And I certainly don't think this was, to your point about effort, energy, I don't think this was one of those games where Davis was sort of floating through.
No.
And I think he was but the combination of, I think there's a little bit of adjustment with Russell. I think for the second night in a row, teams are making it harder. We saw it on Friday, but teams are making it harder for the Lakers to just open things up for Davis and feed him the ball. And the Knicks didn't quite go as hard as Toronto did in slanting their defense, but he saw a lot of attention. So I think there's an adjustment there, and the Lakers offensively have to figure out how can we give him more space to operate. And one thing that would help, we'll get to, and it was with Troy Brown and Malik Beasley just not hitting enough shots. Like some of that was an issue. It was just, and then he just wasn't quite as sharp as he's been in some of these other games. So you put all of those things together, and it's in a lot of ways, it's just kind of a metaphor for me of like the entire Lakers performance. It's not that they were terrible. It's not that they didn't work hard. They just weren't sharp, and they made mistakes. Like the Knicks, I was surprised to see this until I looked at the numbers at the end of the game. The Lakers actually outshot the Knicks from 3-point range, but it didn't feel like that because the Knicks got, I think it was 3 really big fourth quarter triples that were big momentum switches, that were big. They were inelegant also, but just managed to make more good plays in timely moments than I thought the Lakers did. And that was the difference in the game.
Yeah. And then the execution down the stretch. Schroeder scored with about 19 seconds left, and they needed to foul quickly. They let about 14 seconds elapse before eventually putting Josh Hart on the line. Hart ends up hitting both of his free throws, making it a 4-point game. At that point, you can tell this thing is done.
Yeah, it was over. And it was interesting. Like that play, and remember a couple weeks ago or whatever it was that this worked. They actually got the steal. They didn't foul right away. They got the steal. This was the game against Memphis, not the one they played, but the one before that, I think it was. And they tried that again. Schroeder, James Worthy pointed this out on the post-game show. Schroeder and Davis had Barrett trapped in the backcourt, but didn't do a very good job on the trap. Barrett gets out of it. And then they had one more opportunity to foul. And this is where I think Reeves made a mistake I think he was trying to see maybe they could still get the 8-second call or whatever it was. He needed to take that foul right there before the ball crossed half court, because once it did cross half court, the Knicks just did a really good job of spacing out and making it hard for the Lakers to catch them.
I think they actually should just foul Barrett when they had him trapped and called it a day.
Maybe. But I don't have a problem with trying to force that turnover. But once you don't force the turnover, you have to be
sure.
You have to be
sharper than they were.
You have to be on point with your execution. They had one more good opportunity to foul, and it was with Austin Reeves, who doesn't make a lot of mental mistakes, but I think missed this one. And then after that, you credit the Knicks. Darvin Ham, talking about the execution, had a mistake of execution. We mentioned the 3-point shooting between Beasley and Brown. Beasley's worth a couple minutes of conversation himself. Let's do all of that stuff coming up next.
Locked on Lakers is brought to you by Prize Picks. If you've not signed up for Prize Picks, you are missing out on daily fantasy made easy. Prize Picks has the best NBA DFS prop game on the market, more NBA props than any other DFS prop operator, superstar players, bench players. Just pick 2 to 6 players and whether they will notch more or less in their Prize Picks stats projections, and you can win up to 25 times your money. And they offer projections on everything Prize Picks, from baseball, the season's coming up soon, women's college basketball, even disc golf. Use the award-winning app on both the App Store and Google Play. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. Safe, fast withdrawals. Download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com. Sign up, play daily fantasy made easy, and first-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 using the promo code Locked On. Again, the promo code Locked On at the sign up for the instant match. If you are not playing Prize Picks, you don't know what you're missing.
Okay, so a couple little things. You talk about like the Lakers didn't turn the ball over much, only 11 over the course of the game, which is excellent, but they had a bad one late. Like little things like that. The Lakers shot 60% from the free throw line. Not only did they not get there enough, only 17 of them. Anthony Davis, the biggest culprit here, they only made 10. Davis was 1 of 5 from the line, missed a couple late, in the fourth quarter. Dennis Schroeder, who was 1 of 2, he missed one late. Just little stuff like that. And before we get to Darvin and before we get to Beasley, I want to ask you, because we touched on it in the first segment. Like this felt to me like a game where the Lakers could use more size, needed one more big, like, somebody who looks kind of like Mo Bamba. What do you think they'll do? Because they do have this roster spot that they can use. They have Mo Bamba out for effectively the rest of the regular season. There's not a lot out there. Fans on a lot of people on the chat boards, for example, the YouTube board and whatever, have talked about like Dwight. No. Trying to hit a home run with Boogie. Like, no, like Boogie has shown himself to be just not an effective NBA player in the last, whenever he's been on a roster in the last couple of years. And Dwight was unplayable with the Lakers last year. He's gotten any better.
No.
Do you think they need to try to find someone? I think their best bet personally is take the highest performing G League center you can find and try to sign him. I feel like it could be hard for them to go the rest of the season without somebody to fill that role, even if it's just games like this for 8 minutes where you might need someone.
See, here's the thing. I don't think whoever they sign will get 8 minutes. My guess is, unless Wenyen Gabriel gets into foul trouble or you're playing a team that is extremely big, whoever they sign is just going to be just insurance anyway. Yeah. So, look, I don't have a problem if you want to bring in a guy on a 10-day contract, or if somebody is available out there, sure. Like Nerlens Noel, for example, I think is on a 10-day with Brooklyn.
Yes.
If they don't re-sign him, they could bring in Noel for 10 days. He would be ineligible for the playoffs, but in theoretically, assuming the Lakers are in it, but theoretically, Mo Bamba should be available by then. He would just be somebody that helps you get through 10 days, maybe 20 days if you resigned him, whatever. That being said, whether it's Noel, whether it's pick another NBA name you recognize, whether it's some G League dude, I doubt he's going to play anyway.
Yeah, they're a little stuck. It's just like it kind of is what it is. I wouldn't mind seeing them just have that option there. It doesn't hurt to have the body there, if nothing else.
Again, I don't mind them doing it. If you're asking me if I think it's going to make a difference, the answer is no. I'd be, frankly,
on the margins at best. Yeah, you're probably.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, remember when they brought in Sterling Brown, and Sterling Brown he looked like he could have a actual role on the team, like he fit some needs. Barely played.
Yeah. The Lakers were +9. They lost this game by 4. The Lakers were +9 when Davis played. They were +14 when Russell played. To say they struggled, I mean, they did. The third into the fourth was the best stretch I thought they had without AD on the floor. But generally speaking, they struggled a lot without Davis out there. They struggled a lot without Russell out there. And I thought, and I know you thought as well, just again, kind of communicating during the game, that it was a mistake when the Lakers had a stretch where one of the two of them wasn't on the floor, this going into, starting the fourth quarter. I understand actually sometimes when coaches have two stars or two whatever, and trying to steal minutes without both of them on the floor, and making it. This was not one of those games. One of those guys clearly from the moment one of them was subbed off, early, Darvin needed to make sure one of the two was on the floor all the time.
Yeah, the Lakers opened the fourth quarter with a lineup of Schroeder, Reeves, Brown, Vanderbilt, and Gabriel. And they, over 3 minutes, because at around the 9-minute mark, both D'Lo and Davis re-entered the game. They went from up 1 to down 4. And on a night where 3 of the 5 guys out there, Brown, Vanderbilt, and Gabriel, were just not giving you anything offensively, you just can't do that. It'd be one thing if, say, Brown had been really hot, or it'd be one of those games where Jared Vanderbilt was just finding different ways to score, or like Gabriel had been killing it on putbacks, like something like that. Then I don't know if I'd still want
it. I don't think this is a hard and fast rule. I don't think one of them always has to be on the floor at all times in all situations. But tonight, it really felt like they needed to be there.
And on this night, the starters beyond Davis and Russell gave them nothing. Brown, Vanderbilt, and Beasley were a combined 5 of 23 from the field for 15 points. Beasley had 10 of them, but he also took 12 shots to get the 10 points. And
Brown was 0 for 8 on the night, 0 for 7 from 3-point range.
Yeah. And we've talked before about, like Troy Brown he's struggled the last couple games offensively, but he's coming off 3 to 4 weeks where he actually has been quite productive offensively. He obviously needs to be more productive than he was tonight. Vanderbilt needs to account for more. Beasley, though, becomes, I think, in certain respects, more problematic than the other two. Because he's just been in a slump in general. Like, I had been hopeful that Russell's return might snap him out of it, and so far it has not. But tonight notwithstanding, because I don't think Brown or Vanderbilt played particularly well in this night, just period. Okay. But other nights, Brown and Vanderbilt, when they're not scoring, you can look to them reasonably to provide other stuff. And I think very often they do. When Beasley's not scoring, other than gravity and threat, he really doesn't give you much else. And it becomes a problem when he's out there. And it matters that he's out there providing spacing. It matters that he's out there as a threat to shoot. But at some point, you actually need the guy to score. And
he's got to hit shots.
Yes. So
absolutely.
I'm growing a bit concerned about this slump. I know he's a streaky guy. I know that's sort of part and parcel what happens with Beasley, but it's growing a bit concerning.
Yeah, he's shooting 33% as a Laker from 3. I don't know if that actually is current to today's game, in which case it's gone down. But that's not high enough. They need him to be in that 36, 37, 38, 39 range where he has typically been over the last few years. It's 38% for his career is about what the Lakers need. I wish I had something more be like, this is, a great failing, whatever. It was a normal loss. Like, it was a loss that happens in the context of a normal NBA season. They suck. They're disappointing. But it wasn't like this just massive failure or one of these games where you look at it and say, I don't know why they didn't even show up. Like, they lacked precision, but I don't think they lacked want. The problem is, you just don't have a lot of wiggle room for this sort of stuff now. And Darvin talked about filling up their cups again. And, we can't afford any more of this. We can't afford any more of that. But they couldn't afford it a week ago. They couldn't afford it 2 weeks ago. And I don't think this is necessarily like him after the game suddenly putting importance on they've been talking about this stuff for months now. It's just the context of the season where they're at makes it. If you're going to pick a game to lose, you got on the road. You're going to New Orleans, who looked excellent, it should be noted, on Sunday, but are generally depleted. They won't have Zion. And you go then to Houston. It's a very winnable 2 games they've got coming up. So we'll talk about that a little bit. We will get into a few more other things that happened with this game. And let's talk about the standings. Give you a little update there. Do all of it next.
Locked On Lakers is brought to you by Built Bar. If you are looking for an awesome tasting treat, but you don't want the fat and the calories, you got to try Built Bar. The holiday season, it never ends, whether you're talking about from last Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, Easter's coming up. That's a holiday where you do a lot of eating. The food is always coming at you hard and fast, but at the same time, it's like you don't want to compromise taste because that's the whole reason you're eating in the first place, and that's what makes Built Bar your solution. With Built Bars, healthy actually tastes great, and they come in awesome flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, coconut almond, always covered in 100% real chocolate. Makes them deceptively taste like a candy bar, but only 130 calories, only 4 grams of sugar, and 17 grams of protein. The protein's what you want. You don't even have to wait around for a box anymore. You can, if you want, go to Built.com, order them, but if you want to get them right away, go to your local Walmart in the pharmacy section. Go to your Sam's Club. Either way, pick up a box with different flavors of Built Bars and enjoy.
Okay, so as we do now, you have to look every day at the standings. So the Lakers had played very well, came into this game winning, I think it was 7 of 10. Still overall have done just fine since the All-Star break. This game drops them to 33 and 35. They are now in a group of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 teams that have between 33 and 35 losses. But this one drops them into a statistical tie with Oklahoma City for 10th place, and just shows how tight the margins are. The Pelicans and the Lakers have identical records going into Monday's games. The Blazers haven't quite given up yet, though they are starting to fall off the pace. The Lakers, though, while they're on the precipice of falling right back out of that top 10, are also still only a game out of behind Minnesota in the 7th spot and only 2 games behind Golden State for the 6th. So you go and you win these 2 games on the road trip, Andy, and all of a sudden, first of all, you just beat New Orleans, so you've spread yourselves out in a significant way over the Pelicans. But you probably are pushing Minnesota again, could be pushing Golden State again. Every win and every loss is magnified to the 6 billionth degree because things are so tight. You can fall from 7th to out in 3 bad games. I don't care at home, on the road. Like, if you can't beat Houston in a game, that is just this critically important, you don't deserve to have a chance to make the play. Like, you just don't.
No.
New Orleans, they're still fighting for something. Okay, they're not very good, but they're still fighting for something. Trey Murphy was insanely good. He had 41 points on Sunday. They beat a fading Blazers team. But like, that Houston game, like that's a gimme. Like that's a gimme on the schedule. They're not even trying to win.
No. And it was interesting hearing Darvin talk afterwards about, the onus on everybody to, raise their own level of accountability. And he wasn't saying this in a way where he sounded mad or even especially disappointed in the loss. Is more just like a recognition of what they are fighting against. Like you and I had talked about we thought to go 15-8 over the final 23 games after the deadline.
Right.
And so far,
loss.
So far they're maintaining that pace, I think, pretty nicely. They're the prescription we offered for them so far, they seem to be doing okay. But, a loss like this one that doesn't even feel like a horrible one, but was still a winnable game, that could be one that you look back on and say, man, like
it's not as bad as like the Minnesota game. Whenever that
right.
was when we were just like, oh, come on. This wasn't that. It didn't feel that way.
No, but every single one of these now, if they don't win, in certain respects, given where they are, Brian, I don't even care why they didn't win. I just care that they didn't win because they've been playing very, very well lately. After the All-Star break, after the deadline, they've legitimately been one of the better teams in the NBA. There's a lot to feel good about. The way they've managed to perform without LeBron, who, it should be noted, attended this game without his walking boot on. And there have been no updates in terms of where he is right now, but I have to figure no longer wearing the boot. He's long since removed from the scooter that it seemed he had difficulty driving anyway, so that's probably a good thing. LeBron seems to be progressing in the right direction, and they've been really admirable given all of the obstacles that have still been in their way, even after reconstructing the roster so well post-deadline. But man, it's hard not to feel somewhat down after a loss because you know how much it matters and you know that this is one they could have actually pulled out.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, you look at what they have going forward. It's New Orleans on Tuesday. It's Houston on Wednesday. I know AD has had these scheduled days off. I am very curious to see what they'll do. I think he'll play, but I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. Certainly, I think if they lose on Tuesday, they have to play him on Wednesday. But I don't think you can afford to go into any game. I think what you hope is that you play AD both nights and you beat up on Houston so bad that you can sit him and play him 25, 26 minutes and be done with it. But then you get Dallas on Friday and Luka, probably back in the lineup by then, but banged up. So they're a vulnerable team. You have Orlando on Sunday, a KD-less Phoenix team. Oklahoma City at home, 2 games against Chicago, a who knows what you're going to get Minnesota team. Houston again, Utah twice. You have the a game against the Clippers that's shaping up to be massive, and one more game against Phoenix, who even if Durant is back, they might not have him play very much in that because they want to make sure he's healthy for playoffs. The opportunities are there. The thing that I'm curious, because AD was so critical of his own performance, and again, this was not a classic AD game. This was not one of his better games of the season. I did think he was better than he thought he was, but he's holding himself to an incredibly high standard and needs to, because the Lakers need him to be really good. I feel like he has had pretty good responses when these types of games where he is so obviously upset with his own caliber of play. I am optimistic that he will come back with a much, much larger effort, results-wise, I should say, against New Orleans on Tuesday. I would be surprised if he didn't have a really much bigger, impactful game.
Yeah, I'd like to think so as well, and that has tended to be the way. I agree with you that he's responded. As far as him playing against Houston on the second night of a back-to-back, I feel like he has to. Like, if you want to limit his minutes, that's fine, because 20 minutes of Anthony Davis, like very specifically slotted, ought to be enough to secure that win. But make no mistake, that win needs to be secured.
Right. They cannot lose that game. They can't.
Right. And they cannot afford, let's just say for some reason, D'Lo and Schroeder are both just having off nights or whatever. I don't care that it's the Rockets. You can't all of a sudden expect like Austin Reeves to carry the Lakers down the stretch of a game because AD isn't even active against the Houston flipping Rockets. Like, play him 20 minutes, try to make them low impact minutes, whatever. He has to be available and out there. Like, it's just,
if he's not going to play, they should say something tomorrow.
yes.
Because we went through this before, and we all assumed that when AD didn't play in the last back-to-back, that it was something that AD was hurt. Like, because, there was the foot thing. They went back to the, stress injury and all that. It was just, man, AD was, I feel fine. Like, and they got away with it. They won the game. But the Lakers did AD no favors by making it sound like everybody's all hands on deck, coming out of the break, and then sitting him for maintenance for something that apparently had been scheduled weeks ago. So if this one was a scheduled game weeks ago as well, they should say something, if not tomorrow, or today, Monday, they should say something Tuesday that Anthony Davis is not going to play on the second night of this back-to-back and whatever.
Risk losing whatever gamesmanship against the, Houston flipping Rockets. Like, I think you can show your cards, Rob, Darvin, like everyone. I think it's okay. Like, you should be able to script the game, hand the script to the Rockets, and still beat them. Like,
it's not. And then look, I mean, Houston's got some decent players on it. Like, they could be good in a few years. They've got young players that I would want in my organization. They've won 15 games this season.
Right. And the other thing,
and they've lost. I can't even count how many games they've had. They beat the only team that they've beaten since February 1st. They've beaten one team, San Antonio,
right?
Who I might want to remind people are also not trying to win.
The other thing too, like when it comes to AD and the second end of this back-to-back, we're at a place right now that is so critical that if they are that concerned about him playing the second end of a back-to-back with this context, then quite frankly, I don't think he can make it through a playoff run anyway. I mean, I'm just being honest. Like, if they are that worried about him playing the second end of a back-to-back, like they'd rather rest him and risk a loss when you are struggling for your play-in life, not even playoff play-in, then I feel very, very pessimistic that AD can get through all of this anyway.
I feel like, I look at it this way, and we can quit here because I'm sure we'll talk about this again on Monday, for Tuesday's show going into the New Orleans game. I think you got to bank these wins. Like, yes. You beat New Orleans, you beat Houston, you come back, you at the very least split versus Dallas and Orlando. So now you've won 3 of 4. 3 of 4, as we've just discussed in the standings, probably puts you right back up into, somewhere in that 7, 8, 9, 10. If you feel like Anthony Davis, like, look, we're putting, and I do not believe that the Lakers should put Anthony Davis's health at risk. But like, if you know what, we need to make up one of these games. Okay, you sit him after you've won a couple. You sit him after you're back in that 7 spot, the 8 spot, where if you lose, you're not 14th, you're 9th, or something like that. And you say maybe against Phoenix, a game that I know KD's not playing. Phoenix is still a good team. Whatever that might be, or something. All right, Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go to see the show. Participate in a great community, 13,000 plus strong. Leave us your questions, leave us your comments. We Tuesday going into the game against New Orleans would be a great time to bring in some excellent viewer commentary. We love to do that when we can, and we will see everybody Tuesday.